as requested by Arona, we need to improve the click rate. Then I'm going to ask you some sensitive questions. Are you ready?
Bring it on.
Okay. Then actually recently I received some refusal letters from the Beijing office. Basically like a secondary study permits, and normally they have sufficient proof of funds, and they have the a very good travel history, for example like US or Europe, but they get refused based on the section 2161B, because of their officer are not satisfied that they will leaving by the end of the study. So I'm curious, that is it in fact by the political?
Okay, that's a very good question. Now, anyone who follows the news, okay, they know what's going on in China. They know what's going on in Canada. They know about the case of the Huawei executive who was detained in Canada, and so on and so forth. Okay, so to your question, are there possible politically motivated refusals?
Right.
Okay. Now, speaking as a former visa officer, okay, there are.
Tell me the truth.
There are very strict parameters and conditions under which you can legally refuse someone, and based on that, I would find it difficult to refuse just because of political considerations. How would you frame that into a proper refusal? Okay, so legally, there's no proper way to refuse someone for political reasons. Now, having said that, all officers are human,
right?
Okay, and humans, we all have our biases and opinions and minds, our mindset. Yeah. So I'm not going to say it's impossible. I'm not going to say that they cannot be motivated by what's happening politically. There is a possibility, but it would be hard to prove, and I would think that legally it would be difficult to sustain such a refusal if you don't have other valid reasons.
So do you think the Beijing office will be more strict on the applicant's document?
When you say strict, that's a very subjective thing.
Yeah,
okay?
High requirement.
High requirements, and it could be possible, but I would think that what governs visa officers and by extension visa offices are targets which are set by the minister at one point in the year, and for the remainder of the year, every officer strives to meet that target. And as far as I know, these targets have not been reduced. Okay, and I would think that political considerations are one thing, but visa officer has to remember that he should be guided by the immigration law and regulations. Targets are set by governments in order to meet goals, economic goals, and all of these I think are overriding concerns over this political conflict right now between Canada and China. Ultimately, the conflict will resolve itself, but the goals of immigration continue. In order for Canada to maintain our standard of living, immigration plays a big part,
right?
And I think that's more important.
Yes, as we all know, there's a lot of events in Hong Kong from last year. Then, do you think the officer will put more emphasis on the Hong Kong case?
Okay, that's very similar to your question about political considerations and how that impacts decisions with Chinese clients. And as I said earlier, it should not, but yet we all know that officers are human beings and they have their biases and so on. So to answer this question about Hong Kong, I would say that officers once again should make their decisions based on the law. However, they may give an applicant the benefit of the doubt because they may sympathize. They may say, "Oh, the events in Hong Kong, this is what's happening," and I can see how that may give a positive influence towards applicants from Hong Kong.
Actually, based on our daily practice, I do see the Hong Kong approval rate is much higher than mainland China.
Yeah, certainly, because officers, they do not operate in a bubble. They follow the news. Okay, so no doubt, every Canadian officer knows about what's happening in Canada with Huawei, and also the 2 Canadians in China, and so on and so forth. Every officer knows that. So basically, officers don't operate in bubbles. They are aware of current events and what's happening. So therefore, an officer obviously knows what's going on in Hong Kong, and as it's portrayed in media in the West, there's generates a lot of sympathy for those in Hong Kong.
Case. Yes, I do think that, and the media, what they talk on the media is pretty different in the reality sometimes.
Yeah, that may be the case, but media, it is what it is, and that's how the protests are portrayed, and it's easy to see how a person can be very sympathetic to an applicant from Hong Kong.
Thank you.
Thank you all the audience to watch our video. 就感谢Victor 还有 Lily 来参与我们这个移民圣手的录制，然后感谢大家观看我们这期的节目。如果大家有任何签证上的需求，不管是工签、学签，或者是团聚，或者是说商业移民，都可以向我们问询。然后我相信Lily 和 Victor 的经验一定可以帮助到大家的。
Okay, thank you everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, bye bye.